right, good morning once again, everyone. It's good to be here with you this morning. My name is Lisi Schröttner, and I'm a co-pastor here at Wildwood Mennonite. So I love being outside. And this week, while I was struggling with sermon writing, which happens from time to time, I wandered outside to the community garden, and it was just a piece of heaven, and it made me so happy. And if you just look at this picture here are some signs of hope. And there's beauty in there. I'm standing in front of the pollinator garden. There's a compost bin. If you look closely in the back, there's solar panels on the roof of the church. And it is just a gorgeous day. And I am so pleased every time I get to talk about the work that Wildwood is doing about climate justice and mitigating climate change here in our small corner of the world. So this photo that I took on Thursday represents so much of what I'm grateful for, and beauty all around. And then I go back inside. I go back to the internet, and good things happen on the internet. But then thinking about doom and all the things that are going wrong in our world, and this is expressed always well in memes and tweets, if we can still use that word. But I come across things like this. Woman separates yogurt cups into cardboard and plastic as 95 private jets land in Venice for Jeff Bezos' wedding. This was a couple weeks ago, big to-do on the internet. And then I see things like that because I separate my garbage as well. And what does it do? Everything is fine. The world's on fire and everything is fine. And I have to think in despair, everything is meaningless, 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 says the teacher. Everything is vanity, a vapor disappearing in the wind. When I come back inside, I open the internet and I remember, even though I rarely forget, that there is a genocide happening in Gaza. There are millions of people suffering around the world. Here in our own province, as Rick mentioned, because of wildfires and other things, to the refugee camps across the world. There is so much to lament. Life is a vapor, a chasing after the wind. So on that happy note, how are we all doing? Well, if there's anyone who understands doom that we've been talking about, it's Kohelet, or the teacher. And if you want any biblical scholar or any Bible nerd to really nerd out, point them to the book of Ecclesiastes, because there's so much fun stuff in there, and there's a lot of fun in the Hebrew. If there's ever a book for a time such as this time of crisis, it's the book of Ecclesiastes. So who has heard this book before or heard of this book before? Oh, this is great. Okay. So I can scratch out some things, but this is a wonderful book, wisdom book in the Old Testament, and it's puzzled people and scholars for centuries and continues to make us scratch our heads. Who even wrote it? Why is it in the Bible? Why is it so dismal and sad? Does the author want to be alive, or do they wish they weren't? It's a bit of both, to be honest. The word Kohelet here in Hebrew is a noun, and it's a feminine noun in Hebrew. In biblical Hebrew, there are genders. So it's a feminine noun, and its meaning is still debated as well. It can mean teacher, it can mean assembler or assemble. So what is being assembled here in this ancient book? It's teachings and observations on life and death. These words, then, are an assembly of teachings compiled for the listeners to listen to and to heed. So we collectively are the listeners. We are the assembly, which is actually where the word Ecclesiastes comes from, this Greek word ekklesia, meaning assembly. So may we this morning, and as we continue on this series of doom, we are the assembled body. May we heed her words and discern together the wisdom within, so that we can cultivate hope together in these times. If you look on the back of your bulletin there is an image that I drew this week, again, trying to write a sermon, and I get distracted by drawing things. But I put these words together. There are 3 words here in Hebrew: teacher or assembler, wisdom, and hope. And you can find them there, and they make out the outline of these flowers in the soil. And it's an image that I've been coming back to this week as I've been thinking about this sermon and as in this series. When we speak about the climate crisis in the church and active solidarity with one another, it always feels appropriate to use gardening or earthy language and imagery. So let's keep this picture in mind, and I will come back to it at the end of this sermon. But thinking about things growing in the soil that we create together as the assembled body. So what does it mean to cultivate hope when we're facing this polycrisis, these multiple crises that we're in? When our world is hurtling in a dangerous direction, and both human and the more than human creation are struggling and actively harming one another. How do we cultivate hope in soil that is drying up? How do we resist burying our heads in that sandy, dry soil and just giving up altogether? Sometimes it feels like the only appropriate response to doom is to lift our heads out of that sand and cry with the teacher, meaningless. All is meaningless. And some days it feels easier to do that than to push forward. So how do we cultivate hope? What even is hope? So hope, I hope, is a phrase that is used often. I know it's something that I say all the time, whether it's, I hope you feel better. I hope it rains. I hope so. And as a perennial people pleaser, I hope that's okay. I hope that's fine with you. We tack onto the end of every sentence just to make sure things are okay. I hope it's fine. Hope is tied with expectation, with feelings. It's the statement of a wish or a prayer for the future, whether the future is this next moment or the future is 1,000 years from now. In the Bible, to express hope is to express trust and confidence in God, the Creator. Even when life is crumbling around the people of God, texts like the Psalms and other wisdom literature are good places to find these expressions of hope. Last week here, we heard from one of my favorite passages in the whole Bible, Psalm 42 and 43, this repeated refrain, which shows up 3 times. Why are you downcast, O my soul? Why so disquieted within me? Hope in God, for I shall yet praise God, my help and my God. As we flesh out what hope is, even in this short moment this morning, it's easy to see, though, that hope is complicated. So this is what Brian McLaren has titled Chapter 6 in his book, Life After Doom, which we are using as our guide. Hope is complicated. Why is that? Well, hope, as we can imagine, can be watered down to a naive sort of optimism. Again, it's like that word that we fling around as a turn of phrase. Hope can be something superficial that we manufacture when we don't know the answer or don't care to look for a way forward. Hope as naive optimism is that person, and we all have been there, I have been that person, that says with a forced smile on their face and that awkwardly placed hand on their shoulder, it's all good, it'll be okay. Everything happens for a reason. As well-intentioned as this hope may be, it might actually be symptomatic of a deeper apathy or perhaps a lack of care. Hope is complicated because it can be used as a crutch or a band-aid, not actually putting a wish into action, but offering a short-term or surface-level solution. Sometimes hope is offered as a false promise to placate or manipulate people into submission, as McLaren writes in his book. These ill-intentioned wishes are no more helpful than offering someone the alternative, which is despair. So I say all this as someone who's historically been an optimist, always hoping and believing there is good in the world, there is good in every single person, and that everything will turn out just fine. This was me definitely as a kid. One of my favorite colors when I was growing up was yellow because of its brightness and its sunniness, and that's the side of the street I always chose to walk on. And it wasn't until my teenage years that the darker side of the street began to beckon a little more. Or rather, it became part of the narrative that I saw around me, as it usually happens as one grows up and gets to be a teenager. But particularly in church, as I think back in my evangelical upbringing, where teachings of sin and the evils of the world entered the picture, I was taught that there is absolutely no hope for this world save the hope that we have in Jesus, which is not necessarily wrong, but it's not the whole story. I grew up with end-time theology that saw the world burning up And only we, the elect few who have expressed hope in the afterlife, are going to be saved from destruction. The narrative that I was given stopped at the teacher's meaningless. It didn't go further on. The only worthwhile pursuit was getting saved and getting to heaven, and that was the only toil that had any meaning. Hope was more or less an unquestioned belief that God had it all under control if we only lived by a certain set of conditions. All else was meaningless. Can anyone else relate to this? I see some nods. Excellent. I mean, sorry for you and sorry for all of us, but I'm glad you can relate. So when I say meaningless, we've come back, of course, to Ecclesiastes, so send in the poets. As I said at the beginning, Ecclesiastes is a strange and confusing book and quite rambling or meandering, as one commentator put it. And it's a bit more pessimistic than perhaps some other wisdom literature when taken at face value. But you know me, we can't take the Bible simply at face value alone. That's not how we read ancient literature, especially ancient poetry. So can we find a message of hope in the book? How do we find hope when life is meaningless, when our lives and the world are but a vapor? Well, Ecclesiastes 3, 1-8, which we heard Phyllis read, is perhaps the most well-known passage in this book. We heard the song as well, written in 1962 and covered countless a number of times. And this passage as well is read at funerals and other major life events. This is a list here of 7 pairs, or we call them 7 polarities or 7 opposites. And they represent different experiences in life. It's not meant to be exhaustive. It's meant to be a representation of different experiences from work and toil to relationships and human emotions. And you'll notice the word hope does not actually appear in this list. So we might be wondering, why is this passage even relevant for us today? And taking a look at the verses around this passage, we get the same sort of doom and gloom message that pervades the rest of the book. It's all vanity and chasing after the wind. But there is another message in this book that we haven't talked about yet. And actually, the teacher, Kohelet, is quite clear in some parts. And it's summarized by this: despite the state of things, despite the state of the world and the vapor of it all, we continue to live joyfully and fully, trusting the one who is within and beyond the vapor. We continue living, says the teacher. Yes, there's a time to live and a time to die, a time to weep and rejoice, to tear and to mend, to keep silent, and a time to speak. There's a time to practice hope and a time to practice grief. What this passage tells us is that life is paradox embodied. Everything happens in its season, but we don't always know at the time what that season is. As we read in a few verses following in Ecclesiastes 3, verse 11, God has made everything beautiful for its time. Moreover, God has put eternity or a sense of past and future on their hearts, yet they cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. That is why we need to seek wisdom and her counsel. We need to discern what this season requires of us and what this world requires of us now. Even if I don't know the outcome or when doom will finally get here, I have hope that in this dance with doom, I can keep living. I can keep hoping. I can keep loving. I can keep confronting the darkness with light and make the world a better place. And I can rest when I need to rest, being confident that others will continue the work of hoping and loving. Again, for everything there is a season, even a season of rest. This kind of hope isn't a wide-eyed, naive kind of optimism. Hope that persists in the face of doom recognizes that it isn't going to be easy all the time. Recognizes that things might not work out as we had planned or hoped. It's a kind of hope that is built on taking risks and finding both failure and success in those risks. A hope that is built piece by piece, day by day, season by season, one step at a time. This hope journey includes a few steps backwards or a few steps down another altogether different path. On this journey of hope, we remain rooted and grounded in love, as the author of Ephesians writes. Love sustains our hope, and this is the love who is within and beyond the vapor of this life, love that will persist even when this world fades away. Despite the state of the world and the vapor of it all, we continue to live joyfully and fully, trusting the one who is within and beyond the vapor. So what can it look like to keep living? How do we cultivate a deep, real, deep-seated hope? And just a note here, I've always been confused whether it's deep-seated, like a chair seat, or deep-seated, like seeds that we sow. It turns out it is actually deep-seated, like a chair, but I'm going to use deep-seated here because we're talking about cultivating, we're talking about growing things. So deep-seated hope. How do we seed and sustain that kind of hope when dancing with doom? Well, in her book, Tending Tomorrow, author Lisi Schröttner calls such hope a gritty, grounded hope. So some of you may remember in October or in fall of last year, Leah spoke at the MCC's Saskatchewan Peace Conference, which was over at Mount Royal. Some of you were there, I think, and she was a keynote speaker, and I just appreciated her words so much. And her presentation was really a summary of this book that came out last year, Tending Tomorrow. And I chose this picture from her website because she said she did not plan to have her blazer match the cover, but I thought that blazer was just excellent. And she says she bought it at a thrift store, so go thrift. But Leah was a lovely human being, and I have, appreciated her words so much. And she comes from an Anabaptist background as well, deep-seated, if you will, in southern Ontario, and writes about the Canadian Anabaptist experience, which I think is really helpful for all of us to read. The book, Tending Tomorrow, is mainly about the climate crisis and hope and how to respond to this crisis. She's not denying at all that we're in trouble or that we're not dancing with doom. There's a good deal of lament in this book as well. But again, I found her words so hopeful, and they have spurred me on to think about how I can take action. So she writes about this gritty, grounded hope is one that looks clear-eyed at the challenges and is willing to take the next step and the next to act in accordance with our values, regardless of whether the outcome seems fixed. And throughout the book, she writes that her hope is grounded in the soil of love, love for the Creator, love for community, love for creation, both human and more than human creation. So how do we cultivate hope in this particular season we're in? How do we keep hope alive? Well, I'll just outline two things we can do, broadly speaking. So first is listen to poets and prophets. There's so many voices, from the teacher Kohelet in the Old Testament to activists today, that are calling on us to be the change we want to see in the world, or they're calling us to be the answers to our prayers. Poets and prophets have been given a vision of renewal and hope, even though they know the way is difficult and the outcome uncertain. They take what they see in their sanctified imagination, and with brush strokes and spoken word and piercing cries, they invite us into this vision and call us into deeper living. Listen to these voices, seek them out. Last week in our service here, we shared a few poets and prophets, and you can check those out on our website. And I'll say as well, pastors do a lot of reading. A lot of stuff doesn't make it into this sermon. So we have a lot of resources floating around in our head. Sometimes both Joe and I put them in the document that's posted online. So I invite you on Tuesdays when that's posted, check it out, or come talk to us, and we can refer you to books, authors, people that we follow and we read and that we're inspired by. So seek those voices out. And always come and talk to me and Joe if you would like some ideas. Find the authors and the artists who, like the teacher, like Kohelet, talk about the good and the bad, the hard and the soft. The authors who do not make light of despair, but hold on to hope, love, and all things beautiful in this world that make life worth living. And I use this phrase a couple times, more than human. Some authors, particularly Indigenous authors, use this term as a way to talk about the world around us, to talk about creation. So what about those poets and prophets in creation? Go outside and explore nature. Learn about the processes that have existed and evolved over millennia. Learn about how we can partake in those processes and learn ways of maintaining and sustaining our good green earth. We have a lot of gardeners in this congregation. Seek them out if you are not one yourself. And I'll say I did get permission to share this. We have a community garden right next door. Some of you have a plot in there. Some of you have your own gardens at home. But if you don't, take a walk through that space. Again, I spent a good chunk of time on Thursday in there, and it is just, again, piece of heaven. It just is calm. It's peaceful. Things are growing all around you. You can walk around and explore the different plots. Don't pick anything unless you have permission. But you're welcome to look and to listen to the life that is growing there. Along with the more than human creation, listen to Indigenous voices, the original caretakers of this land. Listen to the poets and prophets there that have deep and intimate knowledge of creation. So the first invitation to listen. Find hope in the words that they share. Secondly, take action. Maybe you are a poet and a prophet yourself. Use those gifts. And if you don't want to use those words, if that feels a little bit too out there to describe yourself, that's just fine. But God has given each of us a vision of eternity on our heart, as the poet says, as the teacher says. God has given each of us an inkling of our role in this story of eternity. And part of our task is to discern what that role is. Eternity may mean forever, or doom may be nearer than we think. Our role might feel as small and hidden as a seed in the soil, or a role in this world might feel as big as a tree, or a vine with its tendrils covering a large space. But every action, every act matters. Take action. Leah quotes some authors in her book from a different book, Let This Radicalize You, by activists Miriam Kaba and Kelly Hayes. And they write this: "We do not need to believe that everything will work out in the end. We need only decide who we are choosing to be and how we are choosing to function in relation to the outcome we desire, and abide by what those decisions demand of us." So take action and be steadfast in your commitment to that action. So what are some practical things we can do? So you can change one of your daily habits at home to show care for the earth and your fellow creation, like those yogurt containers, separating things at home. It's tedious, but does it make a difference? Maybe not. But is it a small step? Is it a small action? Yes, it is. And all those things matter if we do them collectively. Advocate for climate and social justice in the political realm. Write or call your MPs. Show up at rallies and protests. Make some noise. Maybe now is the season to speak up and make some noise. There are a couple people in here that like to make noise, so you can seek them out. But there are a lot of important voices speaking in these spaces that need us. Show solidarity with friends and communities in crisis. Be there to show them love in action and show them that they are not alone. We need each other. As the teacher writes in Ecclesiastes 4:12, a threefold cord is not quickly broken. The teacher is writing about friendship, and we need each other. Have the audacity to believe that the world can be different. To use the words with which Martin Luther King Jr. started his Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech in 1964. Have the audacity to believe that the world can be different. Have the audacity to look at the crumbling world and crumbling harmony in our society among us and continue living as one created in the image of love and justice. Be bearers of the good news that we follow Jesus, and like Jesus, we are God's love incarnate, and we are the hands and feet of this love. Have the audacity to believe that this is true and live into that identity. For all is vapor, but the love that holds us. Be that love. As Leah writes, and to describe her book, the future is uncertain, but flourishing doesn't have to be. How will you cultivate hope? How will you contribute to that flourishing? We live the new world into being, so may it be so.